Hello, ladies, NBs, and gentlemen. I made the decision a few weeks ago to not do any more drama videos on my channel. To be clear what I mean by drama, I'm referring to when there's a lot of heated arguing going on rather than legitimate debate. I think to have legitimate debate and make important points, we need to address arguments, not get into fights with people making those arguments. People are more likely to watch and learn from one video that addresses a common argument than they are to watch a long string of back and forth response videos that become more and more esoteric and more personal as they go. I knew I would probably break that rule in extreme circumstances, and when friends of mine are getting hurt and some of them are closing down their accounts on various social media sites, then I consider that to be extreme circumstances. About 5 months ago, I became a member of a Facebook group called Progressive Alliance, which is basically a place for left-leaning YouTubers to share their videos and engage in discussion. I decided to leave the group this week due to what I consider to be tolerance of transphobia. To be clear, I don't think most members of PA are transphobes, but the fact they were very quick to speak up for JJ Talks, a cis white woman, when she spoke out about sexual harassment she had received, yet would not speak out against transphobic comments being made by Bewildered Ape and Jenny McDermott right under their noses, does suggest privilege blindness. Worse than that, some of these people were giving the thumbs up to transphobic posts. I am an ardent believer that our approach to social justice should be intersectional. Intersectionality is not and should not just be a buzzword, it needs to be put into practice. For those unsure of what intersectionality is, Lykke describes intersectionality as a theoretical and methodological tool to analyze how historically specific kinds of power differentials and/or constraining normativities based on discursively, institutionally and/or structurally constructed socio-cultural categorizations such as gender, ethnicity, race, class, sexuality, age, generation, disability, nationality, mother tongue, and so on interact, and in so doing produce different kinds of societal inequalities and unjust social relations. I appreciate that's a bit of a mouthful, but in more lay terms it means that we can't just care about one form of social inequality. For example, to only care about sexism but not racism is to exclude women of colour from the discussion. To only care about sexism but not LGBTQ issues is to exclude LGBTQ women from the discussion. These two examples are what we refer to as white feminism and trans-exclusionary radical feminism, respectively. Now, as with a lot of positions a person might hold when it comes to politics, being a white feminist or a TERF isn't a position you either hold or you don't. There are shades of grey. Mancheese is both a TERF and a white feminist, who in no uncertain terms denies the gender identity of trans women, and as evidenced by her remarks about Palestinians and her video about Trayvon Martin, she is a racist. However, there are feminists who claim to be intersectional in theory, but fail at putting this into practice. A good example of this would be the online magazine Jezebel. They've put out a number of articles aggressively speaking out in opposition to racism, yet when it came time for them to pick a new deputy editor, a black woman who'd been writing for them for a long time was passed over in favour of a less experienced, younger white woman. They also once featured a review of an Asian restaurant, which showed a crass ignorance of Asian culture. Jezebel talk the talk, but they don't walk the walk, as the saying goes. This is very much how I feel about Progressive Alliance's general indifference to two of their members being transphobic. When I brought this up, a couple of people seemed to think I was appealing to relative privation, and I'll admit that may be due to me explaining myself poorly, but to be clear, I absolutely think anyone who's been sexually harassed should speak out about it and be supported regardless of how privileged an intersection they may occupy. My point in short is that members of the group recognised sexism when they saw it, but not transphobia. I'm glad that Tainted Liberal made a couple of posts against transphobia in the group, but I really would suggest that she not be afraid to moderate. What kind of behaviour is acceptable and who is and isn't allowed in a Facebook group is not something that has to be put up to the popular vote, because Facebook groups are not sovereign democratic nations. As such, kicking someone out for being transphobic is not in any way a violation of their rights, and in a progressive group it is certainly the right thing to do. Some people have accused me of being too black and white when it comes to issues like this. Okay, if being transphobic and being ardently opposed to transphobia are black and white, then please explain to me what goes in the grey area. Do you tolerate trans people just as long as they give you their seat on the bus? Do you tolerate trans people just as long as they don't use the same drinking fountain as you? Do you tolerate trans people just so long as they don't expect to be paid as much as you? Do you tolerate trans people just so long as they don't operate heavy machinery? I fail to see why I should have any time for the grey area on this issue. Now, some cis people have complained that trans and non-binary folks can be aggressive in the way they assert themselves, but the fact is, members of disenfranchised groups should not have to politely ask the rest of us to treat them like human beings. They can and should outright demand that we do. I know I would be very quick to react if someone treated me like anything less than a human being, so what business do I have expecting other people to wait until I can be bothered treating them like one? Answer, none at all as far as I'm concerned. Perhaps you want to say you're neutral, or that you're trying to keep the peace. To quote Kerr Avon, neutrality or pacifism, it all boils down to the same gutless inanity. To quote Desmond Tutu, if you are neutral in situations of injustice, you have chosen the side of the oppressor. If an elephant has its foot on the tail of a mouse, and you say that you are neutral, the mouse will not appreciate your neutrality. I'm now going to explain why neither Bewildered Ape or Sequester Zone understand media law and ethics, and as such why I'm not a hypocrite for using a screen grab of Sequester Zone dead-naming a trans woman in a private message, while simultaneously criticising him for making public private exchanges he had with extremely boring. Now, in his video against me, Sequester Zone shows a screen grab of Bewildered Ape accusing me of this hypocrisy. What he doesn't show is the reply I gave to Bewildered Ape in which I explained public interest, so I will explain it here. Generally, in journalism, it is considered inappropriate to share people's private information. However, an exception can be made if such information is in the public interest. To be clear, in the public interest does not mean something the public are interested in, rather it means something the public have a legitimate need to know. Quinn gives this example: correcting a false image or impression. Where a celebrity or public figure has set out to create a particular public image for themselves, and a story shows that image to be false, there may be a public interest in publishing the story that outweighs the subject's right to privacy. So yes, Chris, allow me to flatter you and tell you that while I don't consider you to be a celebrity, I do consider you to be a public figure in our community, and you have fashioned an image for yourself as, among other things, someone who supports trans people. So yes, it is very much in the public interest if behind closed doors you are willing to dead-name a trans person. Now, if you'd like to source a legitimate textbook on media law and ethics and explain to me how, in order to defend yourself against rumours that you'd sexually harassed someone, it was necessary to reveal details of how you'd once had cyber sex with a completely different person, then I'm all ears. I maintain all you need have done to quash rumours that you'd sexually harassed JJ was to get her to back you up, which she has done, quite publicly on her YouTube channel, which has several thousand subscribers. That's it. And for the record, I have never accused you of sexually harassing anyone, nor has anyone, including Extremely Boring, ever told me that you sexually harassed anyone. A small number of people told me that you were flirting with JJ in a Google Hangout and that they found it kind of annoying, but that is a far cry from accusing you of sexual harassment. In my opinion, the rumour that you sexually harassed someone is a Chinese whisper that mutated from someone saying that you flirted with them. The only thing I have ever called you out on in this whole drama is you exposing details about someone's sex life when it was not in the public interest. You have, however, decided to accuse me of sexual harassment. I would defend myself, but given the only evidence you and your spies seem to have been able to find is a clip of me teasing someone for having been in a fight, there isn't really anything to defend myself against. While I'm on a roll, I also want to address Laughing Witch's video because it really pissed me off, because she basically shamed Harmony and Extremely Boring for speaking out about abuse they've received from people within the social justice community, something which a lot of people have collectively applauded JJ Talks for doing. This is basically telling Harmony and Extremely Boring, stop telling us about your problems, you're ruining things for those of us who don't really give a shit. The social justice community should be all about giving a shit. To address the people who are hurling around accusations that I or anyone else is somehow harming the community by voicing disagreement, I would like to quote Theremin Trees, one of my favourite YouTubers. Being part of a group doesn't mean agreeing with every part of that group. We should always feel able to voice legitimate criticisms within a group, whether that's family, friends, social interest groups, whoever. If a group can't handle legitimate dissent, it's not a group I want to be part of. It's my opinion that some of you have an attachment to this perceived idea of community cohesion, not unsimilar to that of a child's attachment to a comfort blanket. It is most certainly not my job to facilitate that attachment, and it's not an attachment I find to be at all healthy. I'm a member of several communities on YouTube. I did not choose to be part of those communities so much as I fell into them by default, based on my various personal interests and political beliefs. Community does not entail loyalty. If members of a community want to join together and form a movement, that is their privilege, but a community itself is not a movement, and members of a movement have no business demanding the loyalty and or support of other members of the community from which their movement arose. If you want that, you have to convince them of the validity of your movement. If you find this video lengthy, boring, and painfully esoteric, I don't blame you. In brief, learn to intersectionalize, read up on media law and ethics, and don't dismiss important issues as trivial just because you don't happen to be at the hub of them. Thanks for watching.